HOA Karen locked my disabled daughter in a freezer until my cop brother saw the security footage. The paramedic's boots crunched against the thin layer of frost covering my garage floor. Steam rose from the open freezer, curling like smoke over the edges as they pulled my daughter's limp body out, her skin pale, her lips trembling blue. "Pulse faint," one of them shouted. "Get the blanket now!" I stood frozen in the doorway, unable to breathe. My world, my heartbeat, my reason, was lying there wrapped in ice. Lucy's small hands twitched as they rubbed warmth back into her fingers. The air stank of metal, freon, and fear. "Dad," she whispered weakly, eyes half open. I couldn't breathe." The sound of her voice shattered me, and then I saw her, Debbie Miller, the HOA president, standing at the edge of my driveway like nothing had happened. Bright yellow blouse, arms crossed, face pinched with that same disgust she always carried when she looked at us. "What the hell did you do?" I roared. She blinked, feigning innocence. "I found her like that. I was just checking a noise complaint. Maybe she climbed in herself." Kids do strange things. The audacity in her tone made my blood boil. "She's disabled, Debbie. She can't even close that lid from inside." Debbie shrugged, glancing toward the neighbors who had begun to gather, phones out, whispering, recording. "You can't blame me for bad parenting," she muttered, then turned her back. I wanted to lunge at her, to tear the lie straight out of her throat. But I didn't have to, because as the ambulance doors slammed shut, a police car pulled up, and out stepped my brother, Detective Ryan Harris. He looked at the scene, then at me. "Mike, tell me this woman didn't lock your daughter in there." I met his eyes, voice trembling. "She did," and he nodded once. "Then she's not walking away from this. She didn't know my brother wears a badge." Before that horrific morning, life in Maple Glen Estates had been deceptively peaceful. The kind of neighborhood brochure companies photograph to sell the American dream. Perfect lawns, matching mailboxes, kids riding scooters past identical white fences. A place that promised safety, order, and quiet. For me, it was supposed to be a new beginning. After my wife passed from a sudden aneurysm 3 years ago, I needed calm. A place where my daughter Lucy could heal. She was 9, bright as sunlight, with a smile that could thaw any heart. But the accident a year later had changed everything. A spinal infection during surgery left her wheelchair-bound. She never complained, though. She'd just say, "Dad, my legs are resting so my heart can do all the walking. That's Lucy, always finding light in the dark." I worked as a contractor, mostly home renovations and HVAC installations. My garage was my workspace, full of tools, wires, spare appliances, including an old chest freezer where I kept extra medical ice packs for Lucy's therapy. It was harmless, normal, until that day. When we moved into Maple Glen, I thought I'd done everything right, paid the HOA fees, read the bylaws, kept the lawn sharp. But that was before I met Debbie Miller, the self-appointed queen of the neighborhood, always in that blinding yellow blouse, clipboard in hand, voice like nails on glass. Her first words to me weren't welcome, they were. "Your wheelchair ramp doesn't match the community palette." I'd laughed it off. "I'll repaint it beige if that'll save the universe," I joked. She didn't laugh. Soon came the letters. The warnings. The fines. Every week, a new reason to remind me she was in charge. "Your bins are 2 inches off property line." "Your garage door stayed open 3 minutes past sunset." "Your daughter's mobility ramp violates visual harmony." Visual harmony. That's what she called it. As if Lucy's wheelchair was graffiti on her perfect little painting. Still, I kept calm. I didn't want drama, not with Lucy watching. My brother Ryan, the cop, had always told me, "Pick your battles." "Mike, some people want you to fight them so they can feel important." So I smiled at Debbie, fixed what she complained about, and went on with our lives. Lucy, meanwhile, made the best of it. She'd spend hours drawing flowers on the ramp rails, giggling whenever a neighbor's cat climbed up to sit beside her. She never noticed the way Debbie stared at her. The cold, judgmental glance, as if disability was an inconvenience she couldn't stand to look at. But I did, and little by little, Debbie's obsession grew. She started taking photos of my yard, recording noise violations, even accusing Lucy's medical devices of disturbing the peace. One evening, as I came home from work, I saw her peering through my garage window. She jumped when she noticed me, pretending to inspect the driveway. "What are you doing?" I asked. "Just checking for code violations," she snapped. "I heard humming. Could be dangerous." "It's my daughter's therapy fridge," I said coldly. "The one keeping her medication cold." "You want to fine me for that too?" She just smirked and walked away. That night I sat on the porch staring at the quiet street. The world around us looked perfect, symmetrical, spotless, peaceful. But beneath that manicured calm, something ugly was festering. Lucy's laughter floated through the window, muffled by distance. I didn't know it then, but that sound, her laughter, would soon be replaced by something else entirely, a scream, and the silence that followed would haunt me forever. The weeks that followed were a slow build of madness. Little things, small enough to seem petty on their own, but together they began to form a pattern that pointed straight back to Debbie Miller. It started with another letter from the HOA. "Noise complaints have been received regarding mechanical humming from your garage during nighttime hours. Please ensure compliance with quiet hour policy." That mechanical humming was Lucy's portable freezer and her therapy compressor. Without it, her circulation therapy couldn't function, something Debbie knew after I'd explained it twice. I walked across the street that evening, letter in hand, trying to stay calm. Debbie was kneeling beside her flower bed, pruning roses that already looked perfect. "Debbie," I began, "this needs to stop. That noise you keep complaining about keeps my daughter alive." She didn't look up. "Then maybe you should find quieter medical equipment. This is a residential neighborhood, not a hospital." My patience snapped. "You ever hear yourself? You sound like the type of person who'd unplug a ventilator if it ruined your view." Her shears froze mid-air. She turned, eyes cold. "Don't threaten me, Mr. Harris. HOA policy exists for everyone. If you can't live by the rules, perhaps you don't belong here." I stared at her. The perfect house, perfect smile, perfect hatred. The kind that hides behind committees and paperwork. That night, I found the therapy fridge unplugged. The plug had been pulled out. Not loose, not tripped. Pulled. My garage door lock had fresh scratches near the keyhole. I installed a small motion sensor camera facing the driveway, just to be sure. I didn't tell anyone, not even Lucy. The next morning, another notice was taped to my door. "Unauthorized security equipment must be reported to HOA before installation." She was watching me. She knew. Lucy tried to make sense of it in her innocent way. "Maybe she just doesn't like the color of our garage?" I forced a smile. "Maybe, sweetheart." But inside I was boiling. Then came the day she approached Lucy directly. I was working in the backyard when I heard her voice. That tight, fake sweetness that always came before something cruel. "Well, hello there, Lucy," she said. "You shouldn't be sitting out here alone. The HOA discourages unsupervised children in shared spaces." Lucy looked confused. "I'm on our property." "Still," Debbie said, crouching down, "rules are rules." "We wouldn't want you getting hurt, would we?" When I stepped around the corner, Debbie straightened instantly. "Just making sure she's safe," she said with that poisonous smile. "Safe from who?" I asked. She didn't answer. That night, I called my brother Ryan. I told him everything. The notes, the tampering, the intimidation. He sighed. "You sure she's not just trying to scare you into moving?" "Oh, she's trying," I said. "But I'm not scared. I just don't understand what kind of person looks at a child like Lucy and sees a problem instead of a miracle." Ryan was quiet for a moment. "Mike, keep an eye on her. People like that. When they can't control you, they escalate." He didn't know how right he was, because just 3 nights later, Debbie's complaints would stop, and her cruelty would take form in something so twisted, so cold, that even the police would struggle to believe it wasn't deliberate. It was a Friday afternoon, one of those early summer days when the air is thick and heavy, and everything feels just a little too still. I was supposed to meet a client across town to inspect a duct installation. Lucy had just finished her therapy session, happy and humming to herself as she colored at the kitchen table. "Be back in an hour, kiddo," I told her, kissing her on the forehead. "Stay inside. Uncle Ryan's coming by later to drop off your favorite chips," she grinned. "The spicy ones?" "The spicy ones," I promised, grabbing my tool bag and heading out. That was the last time I saw her smiling that day. An hour later, while I was driving home, I missed 3 calls from a number I didn't recognize. Then a 4th came. My neighbor, Mrs. Taylor, her voice shaking. "Mike, you need to come home, now! It's Lucy, she's not breathing!" I don't even remember the drive back. Just the sound of my tires screeching into the driveway, the crowd gathered near my garage, and the distant wail of an ambulance. I pushed through the people, heart pounding, until I saw the paramedics. And then I saw the freezer. It was the old white chest freezer I'd kept tucked in the corner of my garage. The lid was propped open, condensation dripping down the sides, fog spilling over like smoke. And inside Lucy, pale, trembling, her small body wrapped in frost. "Who did this?" I demanded, my voice cracking. No one answered. People stared at their shoes. And then, from behind the ambulance lights, Debbie Miller appeared. Clipboard in hand. Always the clipboard. She spoke before I could. "Before you accuse anyone, I heard strange noises coming from your garage and came to check. Found the child inside like that. Maybe she was playing?" "Playing?" My voice turned into a growl. "She's disabled, Debbie. She couldn't even open that freezer lid from inside if she wanted to." Her tone stayed syrupy, calculated. "Then perhaps you should secure your home better. We can't have unsafe equipment in the neighborhood." Unsafe equipment. That's what she called the freezer that nearly killed my daughter. One of the paramedics turned. "Sir, we need space. She's hypothermic." I stepped back, hands shaking. Lucy's lips were blue, her breathing shallow. The frost in her hair made her look like she'd aged years in minutes, and that's when I noticed something. The lock on the freezer handle. I hadn't installed a lock. Never. But there it was, a small brass latch drilled into the lid. Someone had added it. "Who put that there?" I barked. No one spoke. Debbie's face twitched. "Just slightly. Enough." The ambulance sped off, sirens slicing through the air. I stood there staring at the open freezer, my breath visible in the humid air. My brain was spinning. The letters, the noise complaints, the tampered plug, and now this. I turned to Debbie. "You did this," I said, quietly this time, more a statement than an accusation. She adjusted her sunglasses. "Be careful with your words, Mr. Harris. That's a serious allegation." Then she walked away. Just like that. When my brother Ryan arrived at the hospital, he found me sitting outside Lucy's room, hands numb, staring at the floor. He crouched beside me. "What happened, Mike?" "She locked my daughter in a freezer," I whispered. "And everyone's pretending it's an accident." He stared at me for a long second, his jaw tightening. Then we stopped pretending. That night, as the machines beeped softly beside Lucy's bed, I promised her, and myself, that no one would ever hurt her again. And Debbie Miller? She had no idea that the cold she'd left Lucy in was nothing compared to what was coming for her. The hospital smelled like bleach and heartbreak. Machines beeped steadily beside Lucy's bed, every sound a reminder of how close I'd come to losing her. The doctors said it was a miracle she was found when she was 10 more minutes, and her body temperature would have dropped below survivable levels. I sat there for hours, my hand wrapped around her small, bandaged one. Her skin still felt cold, even under the heating blanket. She barely opened her eyes when the nurse whispered, "She's stable now, Mr. Harris." Stable. Not safe. My brother Ryan stood by the window, his badge clipped to his belt, but his face torn between rage and disbelief. "Mike, I'll get the warrant. But first we need evidence, not emotion." "I have both," I said. "She had to unlock that freezer somehow." "And someone installed that lock?" Ryan nodded. "We'll start with that. But you need to prepare. She'll twist this. She'll say Lucy did it herself. She can't even reach the latch!" I snapped, my voice echoing down the hall, and right on cue, the storm started. By morning, the HOA's official statement hit every mailbox in the neighborhood. Debbie had wasted no time. We regret the unfortunate incident involving the Harris family. After an inspection, it appears the child accidentally became trapped in an unsafe appliance. The HOA will be reinforcing safety guidelines for all residents. Accidentally, unsafe appliance. The gall of it made my hands tremble. She'd turned her crime into my negligence. That afternoon, I came home to find a crowd of neighbors pretending to check on us. I heard their whispers. Poor man. He shouldn't have left her alone. Debbie said the freezer was old. Debbie herself stood across the street, talking to a local reporter, face painted with concern. We're all just grateful she's okay, she said sweetly. Our HOA values safety above all. I wanted to storm over there, to shout the truth in her face, but Ryan stopped me. Not yet, he said. Let her hang herself with her own lies. He began his quiet investigation, pulling property records, surveillance requests, and HOA meeting minutes. And sure enough, the deeper we dug, the darker it got. 2 weeks before the incident, Debbie had filed a maintenance request for a garage noise abatement inspection. The same day, she'd borrowed tools from a local handyman who confirmed she'd asked how to install simple locks. Ryan smirked when he heard that. That's intent. She's done. But Debbie wasn't done playing games. The HOA fined me again, this time for unsightly damage to my garage door caused during the investigation. They were trying to drown me in paperwork, make me give up, move out. Lucy came home after 8 days. Weak, quiet, her laughter gone. She refused to go near the garage. One night she whispered, "Dad." She smiled when I called for help. I froze. What do you mean? When I was in the freezer. I saw her face, Lucy said, voice shaking. She was standing there. And she closed the lid. I held her, heart breaking, rage surging. That was all I needed to hear. The next morning, Ryan looked me in the eye. That's eyewitness testimony and probable cause. We had the truth now. But we needed proof that the world couldn't ignore. And if there was one thing Debbie hadn't accounted for, it was the little security camera I'd hidden above the porch light weeks ago, the same one she'd tried to find me for. Ryan smiled grimly when I told him. Let's pull the footage, he said. Time to let the camera speak. Debbie thought she buried her crime in ice. She didn't realize we'd melt every lie until her guilt floated to the surface. For the next few days, I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw it. That white freezer lid closing, the frost forming on the corners, Lucy's faint breath trapped inside. The sound of her muffled scream would echo through my head until I jolted awake, drenched in sweat. Lucy slept in my room now. She'd wake up crying, whispering, "Dad, don't leave me alone." I promised her I wouldn't. I couldn't. The house that once smelled of coffee and home now reeked of fear and silence. Every creak made her flinch. The garage stayed locked, lights off, as if it were a tomb we couldn't look at. I tried to work. I couldn't focus. Every client call blurred together. All I could think of was Debbie's smug face, her voice telling reporters it was a tragic accident. I watched that clip a dozen times. Her crocodile tears, her fake sympathy. She even said, "I feel for that little girl." But this should remind everyone to secure their homes properly. That sentence hit like a hammer. She felt for that little girl. No, she enjoyed it. She wanted to prove power. Ryan kept me grounded. "We'll nail her, Mike. Just hold the line." But holding the line was harder than I thought. The police department couldn't file charges without direct footage. Eyewitness testimony wasn't enough. The HOA board refused to cooperate, claiming Debbie acted independently. My neighbors avoided eye contact now. No one wanted to get involved. Lucy began to retreat into herself. She wouldn't draw anymore, wouldn't sing. She'd just stare at the ramp she used to love and whisper, "Why does she hate me, Dad?" I didn't do anything. I didn't know how to answer that. How do you explain cruelty to a child who's only ever known kindness? One night I broke down. After she fell asleep, I went into the bathroom, shut the door, and finally let it all out. The rage, the helplessness, the guilt. My fists hit the counter until my knuckles bled. When I looked up, my reflection looked like someone else, a man hollowed out by injustice. That's when I saw something on the counter. A small drawing Lucy had taped there days earlier, me and her hand in hand with the words scrawled in pink crayon, "We always win." Something inside me shifted. She was right. We would win. Because I wasn't just her father, I was her defender. And Debbie Miller wasn't a queen anymore. She was prey. I walked out of that bathroom, grabbed my laptop, and opened the security footage folder from the porch cam. My pulse raced. Frame by frame, I started scanning through the night of the incident, looking for movement, light, anything. At first, there was nothing. Just shadows, a flicker of headlights. And then, a shape. Someone walking up my driveway, a flash of yellow. Debbie, standing right outside my garage, my breathing quickened. I hit pause, zoomed in, and saw her reflection in the garage window, her hand gripping something metallic. A key. That was all I needed to see, because in that frozen, pixelated frame, I finally saw the truth. And my despair turned into something sharper, purpose. She thought she'd broken me. But all she'd done was give me a reason to fight like hell. That single frozen frame changed everything. Debbie Miller, in her bright yellow blouse, standing in the reflection of my garage window, key in hand. It wasn't crystal clear, but it was enough to tell the story she'd been desperate to bury. I sent the clip to Ryan. He called me within minutes. "You've got her." "Mike, that's direct evidence of unlawful entry." But he wasn't done. "We'll need to pull traffic cam data to get her timeline. If she drove out before the ambulance came, it'll line up perfectly." He contacted a buddy in traffic enforcement. Within a day, we had a second video, a streetlight cam at the corner of Willow and Pine. The timestamp showed Debbie's car leaving my driveway 3 minutes before Mrs. Taylor called 911. 3 minutes. Enough time for her to shut the lid, lock it, and walk away. Ryan exhaled sharply. She didn't just trespass, she tried to kill a child. That's attempted homicide. My hands clenched around the phone. So what now? "We build the case quietly," he said. "She's good at playing the victim. If she smells a trap, she'll twist it on us. Let her think she's safe." And that's exactly what we did. While Debbie paraded around the neighborhood pretending to be the savior of community standards, Ryan and I gathered every nail, every screw of evidence she'd left behind. The handyman she'd hired for maintenance advice, Ryan tracked him down. He confirmed she'd asked about how to install a safety latch that could lock a freezer shut from outside. We got written statements, dates, screenshots of her messages about that noisy family. Each piece fit together like puzzle edges. One lie clicking into, another until the picture was undeniable. Still, I wanted her confession. I wanted her to say it, so I baited her. The next HOA meeting was scheduled for Thursday. I showed up early, pretending to drop off an apology letter, something she couldn't resist reading. Inside, instead of an apology, was a note. "I know what you did in my garage. You left more behind than footprints. I'm done staying quiet." I tucked it under her clipboard and left before anyone arrived. That evening, she called me. Her voice was tight, trembling. "Mr. Harris, I think we've had enough conflict. Let's not escalate this. For everyone's sake." Her tone wasn't arrogant this time. It was afraid I said nothing. "Just silence. You're bluffing," she hissed. "You don't have proof." Click. I hung up, but inside I was smiling, because every word she spoke was being recorded. Ryan laughed when I played it back. "You baited her like a pro. She's spiraling." He started drafting the official report for the DA. "One more thing," he said. "You sure you want this public? Once we drop the footage, it's going viral. There's no going back." I looked through the window at Lucy asleep in her chair, her small hands curled against her blanket. "I want the world to see what happens when people hide cruelty behind rules," I said. "Then let's show them," Ryan replied. For the first time in weeks, I slept, not because the nightmare was over, but because I finally had a plan to end it. And this time, the only thing colder than that freezer would be Debbie Miller's downfall. We didn't rush. Ryan kept reminding me of that. Evidence wins when it's patient. So we built our case like a bridge, bolt by bolt, fact by fact, until there was nowhere left for Debbie to hide. First thing, chain of custody. Ryan insisted we treat every scrap like a crime scene artifact. The latch on the freezer was bagged, tagged, and photographed from every angle. The porch cam footage was duplicated 3 times and stored in separate drives. Every message, every HOA notice, every whispered complaint was printed, dated, and filed. If she tried to claim tampering, we'd already closed that door. Then we widened the net. I knocked on doors I'd always avoided, the ones where neighbors watched rather than acted. Some refused to speak. Others admitted they'd heard Debbie complain about that noisy family more than once. A teenage boy finally came forward. He remembered seeing Debbie's car at the curb the night before. He'd thought it odd at the time. His short, shaky statement became another hinge in our case. Ryan worked the legal angles. He talked to the county prosecutor off the record, described the possible charges: unlawful entry, endangering a minor, tampering with safety equipment. He made sure the language in our complaint matched statute wording, no room for sloppy interpretation. If you want them to take it seriously, he told me, you don't give them drama. You give them law. Public strategy mattered too. We didn't want to incite a mob, but we did need light. Ryan arranged a closed briefing with a trusted local reporter, someone who'd covered municipal corruption before and understood nuance. We offered the footage and the forensic report, and we asked for one simple thing: hold until the DA was ready. No leaks, no cheap headlines. Control the narrative or it controls you. In private, we rehearsed how the confrontation at the HOA meeting would go. I'd present the facts calmly. Ryan would be the unflashy law at my side. No theatrics. We were building credibility, not drama. Credibility would strip Debbie of her last defense: public sympathy. There were tactical moves, too. We traced the handyman who sold Debbie the latch. He gave a sworn statement. We subpoenaed maintenance logs that showed Debbie had requested garage security advice. Ryan coordinated with traffic enforcement to certify the timestamp on the corner cam. Every timestamp, every signature, every eyewitness bolstered the timeline. She arrived, she entered, she left. 3 minutes elapsed. And then Mrs. Taylor called 911. But strategy isn't all paperwork. There were small psychological plays. I started speaking calmly to neighbors, not with anger, but with facts. I asked for their help, not revenge. People respond to dignity. When one elderly neighbor hesitated, I told her, if you saw someone hurt a child, would you look away? She didn't look away again. Little cracks formed in Debbie's castle of silence. At home, I rebuilt the freezer area as if preparing for inspection. Cleaned, documented, secured. It wasn't for show. It was to prove we had nothing to hide. Lucy watched me work and asked once, "Are we going to be okay?" I kissed her forehead and said, "We're going to make sure nobody else gets hurt." On the day we decided to move, Ryan told me, "We'll give her one last shot to implode on her own." We present calmly. We let the evidence do the yelling. So that's what we planned. A surgical strike of truth. No yelling, no traps, only the quiet roar of facts laid out clean and impossible to deny. When the meeting date arrived, everyone would be there: the HOA, the neighbors, the reporter, and most importantly, the camera that had watched everything. And in the back of my mind, behind the technical checklist and legal citations, a simple thought pulsed like a drumbeat. She destroyed my daughter's safety. Now we'd make sure the law did what it was meant to do. The night of the HOA meeting, the community hall smelled like reheated coffee and anticipation. I sat near the back, Lucy tucked into my lap, her small fingers wrapped around mine like a lifeline. Ryan sat beside me, suit plain, badge clipped discreetly under his jacket. He gave my knee a quick squeeze, a silent signal: steady. The room filled with the usual faces: the board members, the neighbors who only came for the free cookies, and Debbie, perched at the head table like a queen waiting to be crowned. Her yellow blouse shimmered under the fluorescent lights. She smiled so hard it looked rehearsed. She looked ready to perform victimhood. I waited until the agenda wound down. Folks were distracted by sidewalk repairs and next month's yard contest. Then Ryan stood and walked to the front as if he belonged there. He set a laptop by the projector and clicked. The screen lit with the HOA logo. Then, without preamble, the porch cam footage filled the wall. I watched Debbie's face as the clip played. At first, she did that little practiced twitch, the polite head tilt that reads, "This is inconvenient." Then the camera showed her silhouette in the garage window, the latch in her hand, the way she reached, closed the lid, and left without looking back. The still frame of her reflection froze like an accusation. The room quieted into the kind of silence that presses on your chest. You could hear someone swallow, a chair creak. A woman in the third row whispered, "Oh my God!" Someone called out, "Play that again." Ryan obliged. I watched the footage twice, 3 times, each pass stripping away excuses until only the truth remained. When the clip ended, I stepped forward. My voice didn't wobble. I laid out the timeline, the corner cam showing Debbie's car pulling away, the handyman's statement about the latch, the traffic timestamps, the forensic photos of the drilled screws on the lid. I watched as the board members' faces went from practiced neutrality to pale comprehension. Debbie's mask finally cracked. She tried to speak, a practiced, quick denial, but the room had already shifted. Neighbors who'd once avoided my eyes now looked at her as if seeing her for the first time. A man I'd barely spoken to before stood up and said, "That's the woman who fined me for leaving my recycling out too long." Others murmured confirmations, small details that knitted into a tapestry of ongoing control. Then Officer Daniels stepped in, slower than Ryan but with the same calm. He read the charges we'd compiled: unlawful entry, endangering a minor, tampering with safety equipment. The words landed heavy. Debbie's lawyer rose, hands fluttering, but even he seemed unsure. The footage had weight that lawyers don't like to argue against in public. A cluster of phones in the back recorded every second. I felt the room tilt. The narrative had flipped. What had been a hush of gossip turned into a public reckoning. People began asking questions they hadn't asked before. Why had Debbie been inspecting our garage? Why had the HOA ignored several complaints about her conduct? How many times had power been wielded in places where it shouldn't be? As the murmurs grew, a woman rose and walked straight up to Debbie. She looked her directly in the eye and said, "We trusted you to keep us safe. You used that trust to hurt a child." The words landed like a verdict. Debbie tried to say something about misunderstandings, but the words came out small. She rose, gathered her clipboard, and left the room amid a low, stunned noise. It wasn't jeering, not exactly. More a withdrawn shame, like a curtain dropping on a show no one wanted to watch anymore. Outside, a small crowd waited. Reporters with recorders approached me, eyes bright. Neighbors offered small apologies and quiet thanks. Lucy leaned against me and whispered, "Did we do it, Dad?" I looked down at her, the weight of the last week settling into something fierce and tender. "Yeah," I said softly. "We told the truth." Inside the hall, the HOA board members huddled, papers rustling, decisions being made under the low hum of overhead lights. By morning, resignations began to trickle in. By noon, the county attorney had opened a formal inquiry. The truth had done what I feared the law alone couldn't. It made people look. And once people looked, the hiding places crumbled. The camera had watched when nobody else would. And when the world finally saw, the ice around that lie melted away. The day of reckoning came faster than anyone expected. 2 mornings after the HOA meeting, a squad car parked quietly at the end of Maple Glen Drive. The neighborhood stood still. Even the sprinklers seemed to pause mid-arc. Debbie Miller's perfect kingdom had finally run out of excuses. Ryan stepped out first, uniform pressed, face expressionless, every inch the professional cop. He wasn't there as my brother this time. He was there as the law. I followed behind him, Lucy watching from our porch, wrapped in her blanket, clutching her stuffed bear. Debbie was already outside, pretending to garden. Her yellow blouse was back, creased now, not ironed, her composure cracking. When she saw Ryan, her eyes narrowed. "Officer, I've already spoken to my lawyer." Ryan held up a document. "This isn't about your lawyer, ma'am. This is a warrant." Her smirk faltered. "For what?" Unlawful entry, endangerment of a minor, destruction of private property, and obstruction of justice. She laughed, sharp, brittle, desperate. You can't prove any of that. Ryan motioned toward me. I held up the drive with the footage, the timestamps, the statements. You remember saying I didn't belong here, Debbie? I said softly. Turns out neither do you. Neighbors began to step out of their homes. Quiet, cautious. Phones raised. Cameras ready. The same people who'd once looked away were now witnesses to her undoing. Ma'am, Ryan said, his tone clipped but calm. Please place your hands behind your back. Her face twisted, outrage overtaking fear. You're arresting me? For trying to protect the neighborhood from you people? Ryan didn't flinch. The cuffs clicked, the sound slicing through the morning air. No, ma'am, he said evenly. For almost killing a child. The crowd gasped. Someone whispered, She really did it. Another voice said, All this over a ramp and some noise? Debbie's composure collapsed. You think you're heroes? She screamed as they led her toward the patrol car. You'll regret this, every one of you. But her voice cracked midway, trembling under the weight of the truth. As the car door slammed, Lucy whispered from behind me, Dad, is she going to jail? I turned, crouched beside her. She's going where bad people go when they hurt others, sweetheart. Lucy blinked, then nodded. Good. Reporters showed up within an hour. News vans blocked the cul-de-sac. HOA president arrested for child endangerment scrolled across local headlines by sundown. The video footage spread like wildfire, not because of shock value, but because it showed something raw, the arrogance of unchecked power and the courage of an ordinary family who fought back. I didn't give interviews. I didn't need to. The evidence spoke louder than any soundbite could. That night, Ryan and I sat on the porch watching the quiet street. For the first time in months, it actually felt peaceful. No notes, no stares, no fear. Just the hum of cicadas and the soft glow of Lucy's nightlight flickering through the window. Ryan broke the silence. You know, you could press civil charges. Emotional trauma, property damage, punitive damages, or the works. I shook my head. We've already taken enough from her. I just want Lucy to sleep again. He smiled faintly. You did good, little brother. I just did what any father would, I said. But thanks for being the cop who believed me. He looked down at his badge, then at the house. Truth is, Mike, this job's easy when the evidence is this clean. But most people never get that chance. You did everything right. Methodical, careful, patient. You built your case like you build your projects. That's why it stood. His words lingered after he left. Because he was right. Justice doesn't just arrive. You have to build it, brick by brick, like a structure designed to survive the storm. When I finally tucked Lucy into bed, she asked one last question. Dad, did we win? I smiled. We didn't just win, honey. We built something she couldn't tear down. Outside, the moonlight spilled over the ramp I'd rebuilt twice now. Strong, gleaming, permanent. A symbol that kindness may bend under cruelty, but it never breaks. Debbie Miller wanted control. What she got was consequence. And what we built, truth, courage, and love, will outlast every wall she ever hid behind. The following weeks passed like the quiet after a storm, where the air still hums with what just happened, but the thunder is gone. Debbie Miller's arrest was all over the county news. The HOA board dissolved within days, their resignation letters delivered quietly, as if guilt could hide in silence. Maple Glen didn't look the same anymore. For years, it had been a place of polished fences and false smiles. Now people waved for real. Neighbors stopped by not to gossip, but to help. Mrs. Taylor brought casseroles. The teenage boy who'd testified against Debbie started mowing lawns for free. For the first time, the street felt like a neighborhood, not a battleground. Lucy began smiling again. The first time she wheeled down the driveway after the incident, I swear even the sunlight seemed to wait for her. Her ramp, newly painted white and blue, gleamed like something holy. The air smelled of fresh paint and cut grass. Dad, she said, looking up at me, it's not scary anymore. No, I said softly. It's not. The city sent an apology letter. acknowledging systemic oversight in HOA enforcement practices. I framed it. Not out of pride, but as a reminder that bureaucracy only listens when someone refuses to be quiet. One evening, Ryan stopped by after his shift. He leaned on the porch railing, watching Lucy race down her ramp, her laughter echoing down the street. "She's tougher than most adults I arrest," he said with a grin. "She's her mother's daughter," I said, smiling. He nodded. "You know, that footage, it's being used in police seminars now. They're training officers on how neighborhood power abuse can cross into criminality." I blinked. "Our story?" "Your fight," he corrected. "It's making people rethink what justice really means." For a long time, we just stood there, listening to the sound of Lucy's laughter fade into dusk. The same street that once looked like a prison now felt free, imperfect but honest. Before bed that night, I passed Lucy's room. She was drawing again, crayons scattered everywhere. On her paper, she'd drawn our house, the ramp, the sunset, and two stick figures standing side by side. Over it, she'd written, "We're safe now." I stared at it longer than I meant to, because that sentence, simple, pure, was everything I'd fought for. Debbie's house went up for sale a week later. The for sale sign stood crooked in her perfect lawn, swaying gently in the breeze. I never wished her harm, but I didn't pity her either, somewhere deep down. I hoped she'd look at a ramp someday, any ramp, and finally understand what it means to build instead of destroy. That night, as I sat on the porch under the soft glow of the porch light, I realized something. I hadn't just rebuilt a ramp. I'd rebuilt trust, in this neighborhood, in my daughter's eyes, in myself. Justice isn't loud. It's steady. It doesn't always punish. Sometimes it restores. And this time, it restored us. A month later, the world had finally quieted. No more flashing lights, no reporters, no angry whispers. Just peace, real, earned peace. The kind that hums through the floorboards when a house finally feels safe again. Lucy had started sleeping through the night. The nightmares were fading. Every morning, she'd roll down her new ramp with her backpack, the sun catching her hair as she shouted, "Bye, Dad!" The sound of her voice no longer made me ache. It made me proud. Across the street, Debbie's old house sat empty. The shutters closed, the flowers wilted. The for sale sign leaned sideways, collecting dust. A few people asked if I felt vindicated seeing it like that. Truth is, I didn't. I didn't want revenge. I wanted to make sure no one else ever went through what we did. So I started something new. With Ryan's help, we created a small nonprofit, Project Rebuild, offering free accessibility ramps to disabled kids across the county. Local contractors volunteered their weekends, materials were donated, and neighbors who once hid behind curtains showed up with hammers and paintbrushes. Lucy helped design the logo, a small ramp with a sunrise above it. Every ramp we built told a story, not of pity, but of resilience. Of ordinary people refusing to stay silent when power tries to crush compassion. One afternoon, Lucy stood beside the latest ramp we finished for a boy named Max. She looked up at me, beaming. "See, Dad? We're helping people now," I knelt beside her. "We're not just helping, sweetheart. We're building things that last." She thought for a second, then said, "Like hearts?" I smiled. Exactly like hearts. The local news picked up the story. Father turns HOA tragedy into mission for good. People began sending letters, some from across the country, sharing their own battles with cruel neighbors, heartless HOAs, and broken systems. And in every message, I could feel what we'd started, something bigger than vengeance, something human. That night, I stood at the top of our porch and looked at Lucy's ramp glowing in the porch light. Strong, clean, unbreakable. "They tried to freeze our hope," I whispered to myself. "But hope doesn't die. It builds." Then I turned to the camera I'd set on a tripod, the one we used to document our projects, and I said what I've said at the end of every story since. If you believe kindness should be stronger than cruelty, if you believe justice should speak louder than silence, then join us. Subscribe, stand with us, and help us rebuild the world one ramp, one heart, at a time. Because in the end, This wasn't a story about hate. It was a story about building what no one can tear down again.